I'll try to speak loud if I start getting quiet. Just wave at me. Not really good at projecting. I'm Amanda Yamaguchi. I'm the planning section manager for the City of Broken Arrow in the Community Development Department. So what we handle is kind of the day-to-day planning aspect of the city. So I'm just going to go through a couple different, I guess I should introduce Farhad. Also with me is Farhad Daroga. He's our projects manager, special projects at the city. So he covers kind of the larger projects, and I cover the day-to-day type of stuff. So in the planning department, we use a lot of different documents to review different projects. Mainly our zoning ordinance, subdivision regulations, and engineering design criteria. And then if you were just in the last session, we talked about the New Orleans Square overlay. That's one of our 2 overlays in Broken Arrow, the other one being the downtown residential overlay district, so that applies to the 1 square mile of downtown. So there are a little bit different requirements in those 2 areas of town, but for the most part we use these 3 documents that you see here. We have our future land use map, which is tied to our comprehensive plan. This kind of gives us an overview of how the city is expected to grow over the next 20, 30, 40 years. So this is what we reference when we have people coming in wanting to do new developments. We see, does it meet the comprehensive plan? This is a plan that was adopted by City Council. It was recently updated in 2019. So it's fairly new and updated. We also have our zoning map. This shows zoning down to the parcel level for the city. So if you look up an address, you can see, are you zoned single family residential, multifamily, commercial, and this helps us determine what criteria come into play when you're building new additions, expansions, parking lot improvements, all of those types of things. Both of these maps are available online through INCOG, Indian Nation Council of Governments. So if you want links to those, let me know and I'll get those for you. But they're publicly available. They're super helpful reference material, and we utilize them on a daily basis. So I kind of wanted to talk about the progression of projects as they develop. A lot of times the public doesn't see projects until they come before Planning Commission or City Council. And you don't see a lot of the kind of the back end things that are going on before you ever see the project, or the things that happen in-house that aren't necessarily public facing. So our first step is what we call pre-development meetings. So what this is a meeting that developers will have with staff. So we usually have planning, engineering, fire. We can invite anybody that needs to come. If schools need to come, they're available. We have engineering, construction come, utilities. So we kind of cover all the bases to kind of get a good grip on what the project is, what are the improvements that are going to be required, and what are the processes that it goes through. So at that point, we're kind of determining the viability of the project, so to speak. So we have a lot of these meetings every week. Not every project comes to fruition. Sometimes we have pre-development meetings, and the developer finds out this really isn't a feasible project, and we don't hear about it again. On the other hand, we have projects where this is the first step and we see it all the way through to completion, which is very satisfying. The next step is zoning compliance. So after that pre-development meeting, if the zoning that's needed for a project is not already in place, we go through the zoning process, and this is where you might see Planning Commission and City Council agenda items pertaining to an item. So these are usually rezonings, PUDs, or planned unit developments, specific use permits, items like that. These have notice requirements. We'll go through those in just a minute. So what you might see as far as a public hearing notice. Once the zoning compliance step is completed, we move through platting. Platting is basically subdividing the property, making sure that all the utilities are taken care of. We have water and sewer to every lot. We take care of any easements, right-of-way dedications, those types of things. So plats go through this entire process, including stormwater review and engineering review. Once the plat gets filed in the county, finish that process, then we go on to site planning. This is where you actually kind of see where the buildings come into play. So up until now, everything's been pretty conceptual. So during the site plan phase, we'll start looking at the site layout itself, the parking, drive aisles, building facades, setbacks, landscaping, all those things that you actually see when you drive up to a building or shop. That's all kind of taken care of in the site planning process. We do have very specific criteria for different types of developments. So for multifamily, you'll see a lot more landscaping than you would a single-family development. Commercial developments, you're going to have a lot more as far as masonry facades, those kinds of things. So it's very specific to each type of development. Public hearings, these are, this is probably where you all as the public interact with planning the most. You'll see newspaper advertisements, sometimes you'll get a mailer saying that there's a public hearing on an item. So anytime there's a change in zoning, it's a requirement, state requirement and our ordinance requirement that we notify all the property owners in the area. So there's 3 ways we do that. One is a notice that's posted in the Tulsa World. There's notices that are mailed to all property owners within 300 feet of the subject property, unless it happens to be multifamily, and then it's a quarter-mile radius. And then you've probably seen yellow signs posted on the property. I've got those on the next slide here. They're really pretty. They're giant. They get posted on the property. That's just so anybody that's driving by who maybe wasn't in that 300-foot notice radius or doesn't read the Tulsa World, that's just another way that we get that information out. We've also been creating videos that are posted to Facebook and YouTube. Planning Commission Insights. This talks about the different items that are on the Planning Commission agendas. So follow our Facebook or YouTube channel for that. The picture on the other side is an example of the Tulsa World notice. They're very wordy, so yeah, they contain a lot of very helpful information.
Can I ask, can you go back to that slide before?
Absolutely.
Just curious, the short-term rentals, because I've seen that a lot. Typically, what is that for?
A short-term rental is like an Airbnb or VRBO, where a property owner can rent out their property for less than 30 days. So typically it's like a weekend rental, something like that. So I'll be happy to talk to you more about those if you want afterwards. But it is something on our next Planning Commission agenda next week. So check that out. Yeah. I think that's all I have. I covered a lot really quick. So Farhad?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll try and speak from here too, and so I hope you can hear me. If not, let me know. My name is Farhad Daroga. I work in the Community Development Department, and I do long-range planning. We're all planners, but my projects are long-range and hopefully fun projects that are related to quality of life. The projects that we are working on right now, our community and our council's working on, they were all identified in our comprehensive plan, the city's master plan that the city council and the community adopted in 2019. There's a long list of those items, and that comprehensive plan is on our website if you want to look at it, or contact us and we can go into it. One of the projects identified in the quality of life of our city's master plan, there are several of them, and I'm going to take a few at a time. Bluff Landing. Bluff Landing is an existing camping site at the very east end of Kenosha or 71st Street at the Verdigris River. If you went east on 71st Street, it ends at the Verdigris River. On the north side of 71st Street is a campsite that the Army Corps of Engineers have owned and maintained since the 1970s. I believe that they might have started and maturely started in 72, and it has been there since that time. They have recently expanded it, and it's a wonderful site. Besides that, there are 2-3 other sites. The Corps of Engineers owns all the land adjoining the river, and they also own the river itself, the Verdigris River. So Bluff Landing was a site identified in our quality of life projects in the comprehensive plan. We hired a consulting firm, TSW, from Tulsa, to prepare a plan which the council acknowledged and accepted in December, just about a couple of months ago. And I can go into that in more in detail and talk about that later. It's a recreation area, and right now, most of it is being used by fishermen or people who come to camp there, or those campers who are here for an event with their RVs. They just park their RVs on the weekend. Our goal is, and our hope is, that we would develop this whole area that can be used by other people besides just the few that use it now. So that is Bluff Landing. On your right-hand side, as we are talking about public transportation, the city completed a transportation study for our people last year. We're in the early stages of implementing public transportation and access planning. And that is to provide transportation for our local public. Back in 1974, when we had the oil embargo, the city did not have a bus service. So subsequent to that, in the mid-70s, the city contracted with Tulsa Metropolitan Transit Authority, and there is a bus service. There are 2 routes in the city and one long-term route that is the commuter route that goes to Tulsa. Not many people are aware of it, not many people use it, but this is more micro planning that we can provide transportation for our people to get around in within the city. So that is the other study we are working on, and hopefully we'll have a plan implemented this summer. Transportation in communities like ours, that are suburban communities that are spread out, bus service that comes and picks up people and drops people off is somewhat difficult. We've learned that over the years. So micro transportation, which is basically on-demand service, is being used quite often in many parts of the world. Some people, in some areas, it's an Uber or a Lyft, but that's the technology where people can call somebody and say, I need a ride today to come to the City Expo at the Stony Creek Hotel, and they will drive you here, instead of waiting for a bus or having a bus coming in. So that is a study that we were working on the last year, and we have recently completed that. The other projects we are working on is the East Side study. Our city back in 2008 and 2009 did a corridor study of land that is east of County Line on either side of 71st Street, which is Kenosha, for approximately 6.5 square miles. That was a new growing area back in the mid-2005 to 2010 timeframe. That study was completed. We are doing an update of that study now to look at, a lot has happened, a lot of development has happened if you go out east on 71st Street from County Line, going east towards where the new Walmart is and Forest Ridge and all that area. So we're doing that study. Aspen Landing, and I hope that you can come and talk to us about, there are tables out there. Aspen Landing is Aspen Avenue, which is 145th. If you keep going south, it runs into the Arkansas River. Broken Arrow has 2 rivers, the Arkansas River and the Verdigris. So Arkansas is on the south end. They're both different types of rivers. The Verdigris is a navigation channel. It has different engineering criteria and different planning criteria. It has water 365 days of the year, and that water level generally cannot change more than 2 feet because they have to keep it for barges and boats to go through. The Arkansas River that comes from, over here comes from Keystone Dam, is not a navigation river, it's more of a water supply river. So water is fed into this part of the Arkansas, depending on what the dam system does. There are 17 dams on this system. The Keystone controls the water that comes to Broken Arrow in the Arkansas River. So we're doing a study with the University of Oklahoma School of Architecture and Planning in Tulsa at the Schusterman Center And they're out here on the table, so come and give us some input. The students have a lot of wonderful ideas of what would you like to see. Right now, we own 137 acres of land, and we have several soccer fields, baseball fields, and that's all that area is used for. Hopefully with this study, we can suggest to increase our quality of life, we can bring in other type of uses. So that's what that study is. The Streets for All, that is also a table right here just outside this door. The city council agreed and have contracted a consulting firm, Jewel Design, which will also have another session later on at 12:30. About our streets. If you look at Broken Arrow's history for the last many, many years, we've taken roads and 4-lane them and 5-lane them and so forth to accommodate our traffic. 99+% of our people travel by their car. But some people do not have a car or might choose another mode of traveling like walking and bicycling. So when we did the downtown master plan, the Rose District plan in 2005, one of our goals was to make the area walkable. So our community has come to learn, and we see what walkable communities can do, like the Rose District. So the plan here is that we are branding this program as Streets for All, for people who walk, people who bicycle, or people who cannot drive. And that study is, we just started a couple of months ago, and we have Tammy on our table over here, and she would love to have your input on what you would like to see, what are your priorities, how do you want to get around. Housing and demographic study, we are beginning to start that. We haven't got a contractor on board. The council has just approved us to consider hiring a consulting firm, and we are in negotiations for that. The city, over the years, has done demographic and housing studies in-house. To give you an idea, I did one of my first studies. City of Broken Arrow, our median age, median meaning half the people are under this age and half are over, was little less than 26. So we had half our population 26 and under, and the other half were 26. Today, or in 2020, that figure is approaching 37. Now, it's a small number, but demographically, it's a huge shift. What that means is that back then, less than 3% of our population was 65 and older. Today, that 3% has gone up to almost 14%, perhaps even 15%. Our city is changing. A lot of population is growing. We have a lot of young people, but we also have a lot of people who are aging and elderly. So what does that mean for our city council and our decision makers? We need to know what to do for quality of life. So back in '78, when we started the soccer fields, the Indian Spring Sports Complex, we had a large disproportionate number of people playing soccer. So we built the Indian Spring Sports Complex, we built soccer fields and baseball fields and sports. But today, 15% of people are grandparents, and they may not be playing soccer or baseball. They're walking and jogging and all that. So these studies, I'm going over these, they correspond to our shifting demographics. Also, housing. We have more than 40,000 housing units in Broken Arrow today. Half of them, or perhaps closer to half number, is older than about 45 to 50 years. We are a fast-growing community. Half of the housing has been built in the last 25 years or 20 years. So our city will have needs with neighborhoods aging and getting older. We will need more sidewalks, maybe more ramps, maybe more bus stops, maybe more parks, shade structures, all those things. So we've got to do a housing study to address that. And to address those type of issues, our city leaders need data. We need to provide them information. So we're doing this study pretty soon, this hopefully starting very soon, housing and demographic study. I would like to do that because the last one we did many years ago in-house was from information that is getting dated. Our communities are changing. The form of housing that the younger people, the Gen Z or the millennials are looking for is different than the baby boomer generation is looking for. The baby boomer generation are surrounded by golf courses, big houses, big driveways. Not everybody is going to be living that way. So in the country, there's this philosophy of the missing middle housing. You have apartments that are relatively high density with people paying rent in these big apartment complexes, and then you have big housing. You have all kinds of housing options in between. Of course, we are familiar with duplexes, triplexes, condominiums, townhouses, but there's a lot of missing housing, missing middle housing that people would want. There are people that are aging that want to live in relatively comfortable big homes, but they don't want big yards. That's a growing trend that we've seen over the last 20 years now. There are people wanting to have condominiums and so forth. You're seeing the growth in our whole metropolitan area, including Broken Arrow and Tulsa and other communities. So housing and affordable housing are a topic that our community needs to address and keep in front of us to address those type of things. So we're doing a plan on that. Okay. I was talking about all the projects we are working on. We are also going to be working on some other long-term projects as we move along. These projects were all part of our comprehensive plan. I hope that you all can take a look at it, look at all the planning tables out there, because all of these add up to quality of life. We may not use that part. You may not have been to Bluff Landing, but go there and see how wonderful it is.
I got a question about Bluff Landing. We went out just because we wanted to explore it, find out what it was out there. And it said on the website that it was open 7 days a week, year-round, but the gates were locked when we went out there, and we couldn't get in to see.
This summer, starting last June or July, the Corps of Engineers decided to upgrade the electrical system. They had 22 slots for campers to bring in RVs and plug in. Those old plug-ins that were built in the late 80s were outdated, so they're upgrading the electrical system. They're also bringing in more water there. So there was, for a while, they had shut the place down. But it should be open, because I met with them yesterday, the Corps people yesterday, and I believe everything's back online. Now, for those who have been here for a long time, there's a site called New Grand Dam, which is at the east end of the river. It's downstream from Inola. It is in the edge of it is in Broken Arrow's fence line. That site has been closed because of security issues. They don't have enough manning, and there's really nothing there other than the dam and the river. It's a pretty site.